So they're at the moment in America, they've got their midterms coming up. So what they're doing right now is they're trying to vote for the people who are going to then stand in the midterms. So in the system in America is they have, the Republicans typically, and then the Democrats, and then there'll be independents in between, or there'll be some very, very small minor parties. And the Republicans will get 4, 5, 6 people, in a particular area that want to be the representative. And so they have what they call a primary. And the primary is all the Republican voters get together and they say, I pick you. And then that person goes to the big leagues and goes up to the actual midterm elections as the Republican representative. A part of what happened in one of these Kansas primaries was the people of Kansas, or the people in this region, were asked about making, actually, I'll just get my notes up to make sure I get this completely accurate. They were asked, the ballot was put out, was to remove the right to an abortion from the state constitution. So obviously Roe versus Wade has just happened, and then they throw things to the states. That's their argument for it. So there was a ballot done in Kansas asking the people if they wanted to remove the right to an abortion from the state constitution. So the Supreme Courts have said states can decide. In Kansas, the state has decided, and they've written it into their constitution. Now, there's a lot of interesting things that happened with this particular ballot. The first one, which is a great sign for the Democrats, and by the way, let's just preface this by saying I think they're still the underdogs in many areas, but compared to the shellacking they look like they were going to get, is 910,000 people turned out in Kansas. Now, normally what happens in the midterms in the off year from the presidential is no one votes. As an example, in I think the last 2 off year midterms, 330,000 voted in one of them and 473 voted in the other one. This time, 910,000 Kansasonians turned out to vote, which is only about 500,000 short of who voted in the presidential election in 2020, which, as we know, was the biggest there's ever been, 83 million to 78 million or whatever the final thing was. So basically, a huge number of people turned out. Now, the only way the Democrats will get anywhere near either holding Congress or the Senate is if there's a huge turnout. And because of Roe versus Wade, examples like this with Kansas are showing huge turnouts. Now, the other thing that happened, which was very bizarre in the situation, and we have experienced this in New Zealand, is the way the ballot was written was incredibly hard to understand, as it used sort of a double negative.
Yeah.
So what you should do, we call them referendums, however they call them, is there should be a very simple question, right? That I think basically has an affirmative that means yes, and a whatever the opposite of affirmative, a negative that means no. But often what happens is it gets flipped around, and saying no on the vote means you're supporting it, and saying yes on the vote means you're not. And that's what happened in this actual ballot. So it was written in a way on purpose that was very, very confusing. Now, remember, they want to ask if they should remove the right to an abortion from the state constitution. Now, what they could say is, shall we remove the right to an abortion from the state constitution? Yes or no? That's what they could say. I don't know if you've seen this yet, Chewy. I don't know if I can actually get through all of this, but I'll read to you what the thing did say. You ready? This is the literal question. Because Kansans.
That sounds weird.
Because Kansans, this is the question. This is the yes/no question. Because Kansans value both women and children, the Constitution of the state of Kansas does not require government funding of abortion and does not create or secure a right to abortion. To the extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States, the people, through their elected state representatives and state senators, may pass laws regarding abortion, including, but not limited to, laws that account for circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, or circumstances of necessity to save the life of the mother. Yes or no?
Jesus Christ.
I actually don't understand it. I don't understand it so much that I think others didn't, that they actually had to write down what voting yes or voting no means. So that was the question. But look, it's a ridiculous question, but let me just remind us of our own foray into various referendums. 2009, the so-called anti-smacking debate. Should a smack, as part of good parental correction, be a criminal offence in New Zealand? So obviously it's nowhere near as long-winded and bad as theirs, but
No, at least
what
it's short.
but what about a smack as a part of bad parental correction? So how do you tell the difference between a smack as good parental correction or a smack as bad parental correction?
Yeah.
You know, should
Yeah,
smacking be illegal? Should smacking your children be illegal? Simple, yes, no.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, no, we I would call it editorializing a little bit as like, but that description is just losing any sort of useful information out of it.
Yeah. So they went on to explain. I'll just put a vote for. I'm not going to read them both out because they're so even the explanations are long one. But a vote for the value, a vote for the value them both amendment would affirm there is no Kansas Constitution right to an abortion or to require the government funding of abortion, and would reserve to the people of Kansas through their elected state legislators the right to pass laws to regulate abortion. So yes means no. So you vote yes, you're voting against abortion. Now, here's an interesting little rub for you. I know you like a little rub occasionally there, Chewy. There was a group sending it because it was misleading enough.
I heard about this.
Yes. There was a group tied back to some Republican supporters, former Republican politicians, who are actually sending out text messages trying to confuse people to vote the wrong way. So this is the message that went out. Women in Kansas are losing their choice on reproductive rights. Voting yes on the amendment will give women a choice. Vote yes to protect women's health. And actually,
God, that's some scummy bullshit, isn't it?
It's the opposite. Just so we were clear, vote no will protect women's health. Vote yes will remove the right from the Constitution for an abortion. So there are these groups who are actually going, not just and this is not illegal because you're allowed to lie in election campaigning. Legally, you're allowed to lie.
What the fuck?
So what happened, to get to the full story, is the people of Kansas voted 59% to 41% that they did not want that removed from their constitution.
God, that's close.
The summary of the whole thing is 60 to 40, which in America is a shellacking for this kind of thing, especially for many people who probably would have got confused and put the wrong vote out there as well. So 60 to 40, they said no to making it harder to get an abortion. And that is what Kansas has taught the Democratic Party about the midterm elections. If they want to win, if they want to actually try and compete and not themselves get obliterated at the midterms, which has been the predictions up until the last few months, they need to pick up this baton and run with it. And that's possibly a way. They might not win Congress, but they might retain and gain in the Senate. And if they win one of the houses, basically the Republicans can't do all these things they said they're going to do. If they lose both, then it's sort of trouble for the Democrats. It means that Congress will write the bills, the Senate will forward the bills to the president, and the president will have to veto them if they don't agree with them. But if the Senate belongs to the Democrats, then Congress might be Republican, will write the bills, send them on to the Senate, and if they're the kinds of bills like this Roe versus Wade type thing, although that was Supreme Court, but those sorts of bills, then the Senate will stop them, which means the president doesn't then have to veto every second bill coming across his desk. Actually, there's one more thing to add, Chewy, but you go for it now, mate.
I was just going to say, you just jogged my memory. Are you familiar with the honest government ads that have been running out of Australia lately?
No.
Or in the past year? Very, very good. You'll dig them, and if the people watching haven't come across them before, just jump on YouTube and have a look for honest government ads.
Okay.
But they have just started doing them for America. And they have done one covering the Supreme Court, which is very, very funny. And maybe we should have a look at that at some point.
Yeah, sounds good. Now, we've got one more little conversation to have, but let me just wrap it up with this. The other reason that it seems that this is the path forward for the Democrats if they want to win. I'm not even actually offering opinion on whether it's a good or bad idea necessarily, but this seems to be the one that works. they're really pushing back on Roe versus Wade and women's reproductive rights. I'm sure, Chill, you know about 538. 538 is probably the most reputable source of polling in America.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Last week, they forecast or predicted that if you held this election 100 times, 52 times the Democrats would win. Since last week, it's now up to 57. So this is the Senate only, that if you held the election 100 times, 57 of those times, the Senate would go to the Democrats. And that's since Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade, I think it was something like 53 or 52 to the Republicans. So it's actually swung now 7 to 10 percentage points towards the Democrats because of Roe versus Wade. So if the Democrats want to win, this is their way forward. For full transparency, it doesn't look anywhere near as good for the Democrats in the Congress. If that was run 100 times, Republicans would win it 80 times out of 100. So I think the idea for the Democrats is they were expecting to lose massively in both. I mean, even somewhere near 50-50 chance in the Senate is hugely unheard of in this midterm election. And the Republicans pushing through Roe versus Wade and the Supreme Court pushing it through, and Republicans earmarking things like LGBT rights and same-sex marriage and that kind of stuff. Even though, me personally, I think sort of that when I use the word social engineering, again, it's not a negative term, but those kind of social issues aren't necessarily the best thing for a parliament or a government to focus on all the time. At the moment in America, that's almost all that, and the cost of living is almost all the Democrats should be focusing on, because that's what's working at the moment, and they should just chase that through to the midterms, which I think are in about 2, maybe 3 months.
Yeah, it's getting close. They've got some good candidates that are looking to knock off some pretty poisonous Republicans, so I hope so.